I'm making this kitchen island for one of my customers. It's going to be 40 inches long by 24 wide. This is going to be the bottom board that goes across the bottom of the island. But main reason for this video is showing what has to be done with the wood. These are 2x8 planks, of course from Lowe's where I always go. But when I first get them, they're real rough looking. This is a 2x6, but it's the same type of board. They're really rough looking. Of course, on the ends they're factory cut and really bad looking as far as the roughness of it. So what happens is I run them through the planer. Well, I cut them to length first. They're 8 foot long. I cut them to length and I run them through the planer to get them all even with each other, so they'll butt up against each other like right here, just smoothly across. Because sometimes for some reason one of them may be a little bit thicker than the other, one of the planks, and run it through the planer straightens it out. But also, if this one, luckily all the joints butt up together, so I didn't have to run it through the joiner to get the sides to come out straight, because they pretty much are straight, so they butt up together real easy. So I didn't have to run either the top board or the bottom board through the joiner. So I'll pocket hole all these together. But one of the main steps of all this, of the table, doing the tops and the bottoms, which a lot of people don't realize, this is probably 80% of importance in the job itself, is the sanding and the two different stages of sanding. The first stage, after I get off the planer, it's a lot smoother than this, but I go over it with a 80 grit sandpaper, which is a real gritty sandpaper, to knock off all this crap that's on top of it, and also on the edges. And then I'll have to go back over it again with a 360 grit sandpaper, which is the real fine grit sandpaper. We call it. You can hardly feel it when you rub it on it, but once I go over the second time with the smaller grit, it smoothens it out really smooth. Takes a little while, and the sanding part is, a lot of people don't like to sand, but it doesn't bother me. But the sanding part can sometimes be the most time consuming one of the parts of the build. And then a lot of times the customers will ask me to round the corners, which I do anyway on all my builds. I don't ever leave the corners right here on the side of the table at a point, because a lot of times if you have kids, they can run into it and it can knock a chunk of skin out of them. But also on the ends that will be the side of the table, I bevel these around, round these over on the bottom and top, because when you get it off the if you don't do that, then a lot of times it'll have a sharp edge, especially if you run it through the joiner. A lot of times it'll have a sharp edge on it, and if it's on the outside board and you're walking up against it or something, or your kid runs a hand across it, that edge will cut you. It's pretty sharp on the side, so I bevel over all the way across with the 80 grit sandpaper and knock all that edge off. Same thing with the ends here. I'll bevel over the end and I'll bevel under the end, so it won't be sharp there on either end. And of course the corners, which I do on all my builds, I will round over. I don't ever leave them a straight point like that right there. This is going to connect to the other board, but that's what it would look like before I bevel over it or round it over. That's a very sharp end. So if your kids are playing around or something and they hit that edge right there, it's going to do some damage. So I get the 80 grit sandpaper and I cut it all the way around, sand it all the way around until it's nice and smooth. So that won't happen. So that's the part of the sanding. That's one important part of the build, which is time consuming, but it's just something a lot of people don't really understand that goes on when you build these things. It's not a snap together model like I used to think before I started doing this stuff, that everything came ready to use, but it's not. So but anyway, that's a little education moment on the wood itself to prepare it. This here is all sanded down with a smaller grit sandpaper. I'm ready to put these together with pocket holes, and once I do that, this is, like I said, this is the bottom shelf. Once I do that, it'll be ready for pre-stain and staining, and of course the rest of the build will be the legs and the supports. So, but anyway, that's a little tip on the wood itself, because all wood doesn't come through Lowe's or Home Depot or wherever you get it from. It doesn't come through perfectly sanded and ready to go. So on with the build.